Okay.
Okay, good morning. Thanks guys for coming. Okay, so I would like to discuss today the sugya of zoreh, commonly translated as winnowing. Now, being that I grew up in the city, very little exposure at all to farming and agriculture, so the first thing I had to do was really investigate and look into what exactly this is done, because I was speaking with our Florence on Shabbos. We grew up thinking that potatoes grow in the store. That's where all fruits and vegetables are originated. As we get a little older, we get more educated. Okay, so as follows. In the Mishkan, as we know, all 39 halachos are learned out from various actions that were performed in the building and the maintaining of the Mishkan. So zoreh in the Mishkan was as follows. The agricultural steps were needed for the production of certain herbs and the wheat that was used to make lechem hapanim. And the multiple stages in getting the wheat from the field to the table starts off with, first of all, you reap the wheat, you kaitzer. Well, first you have to plow the field and plant and everything. But once the wheat is grown, then you kaitzer, you cut it. Then there's ma'amer, there's gathering up the wheat together. Then there's dush, where they have the stalks, they kind of beat them with these sticks, where they thresh out some of the starting the separating process of the kernel from the stalk. After dush, so then you have to winnow, then you have to zoreh. What you have is there's a mixture of the grain kernels, the chaff, which is a light, like a light membrane that surrounds the kernel of grain, and some debris from the stems that was all mixed together. So it would take some type of pitchfork or some type of utensil, toss it up into the air where they would have natural wind, or they would create a wind tunnel basically, which would blow away the light chaff, and the heavier kernel would just fall to the floor. And what would you know? There you go. Now you got your wheat kernels, which is then followed by boirer. You still have to do a little more hand separating of selecting out the kernels from other. There's little stuff that's still left. Then there's teichen. Then there's grinding. Then there's miraked. You sift, and then you have the flour. So you sift it until ultimately you get to baking. Okay, that's the basic process from field to the table. So, again, the commonly employed method of zoreh, of winnowing, is throwing up the kernels together with the chaff and the stem debris into the air. The wind will blow it away. So what it's doing is it's separating the junk from that which you need. You need a kernel. The kernel will fall to the floor, and the wind will take away the stuff that you don't need. The Gemara, which is number 1 over here in the papers, asks a simple question. The Gemara in Shabbos, on the bottom of Ayin Gimel and Beis, top of Ayin Daled Aleph, asks, after the Mishnah went ahead and delineated for us all 39 halachos, so we would think that all 39 are unique. However, the Gemara asks, we have 3 which are really very similar. Zoreh, which we just described, the winnowing. Boirer, which happened really beforehand, which was, right after Zoreh, which was a selecting off the ground that which you needed, and then followed 2 steps later by miraked, sifting the flour. All those 3 malachos, why do they get their own independent name? They're really all the same, selecting the good from the not good. So why do we have them as 3 independent malachos? We really should have only 36 or 37 malachos. Why do we need really 39? So the Gemara answers, it's true. Each one is really accomplishing the same idea. In theory, they're all the same, that they're all selecting the good from the bad. However, the Gemara answers, in the name of Abayin Rachel, Kol Milso Dahavya b'Mishkan, anything which was in the Mishkan, Af al Gav De'ika Dedamula, Chashva, even though they're similar, and they're accomplishing, the end result is really the same, separating the good from the bad. But since we see independently in the Mishkan, each one was a separate step, so that's what you need for the production of the wheat. Therefore, we're going to have them on the list of the 39 malachos. But it seems like, from the Hemshech Gemara, which we're not getting into right now, that really the parameters that we're all familiar with boirer, selecting and separating certain things on Shabbos, we know you need the step 1 for boirer is that there must be a taruvis, there must be a mixture. If there's no taruvis, if everything's the same, then, let's say you have red jelly beans in front of you, and they're all exactly the same. They're all red, right? So just because I'm picking one and leaving some others, that's not boirer. I'm not selecting one over the other. They're all exactly the same. The first step you have to have is that there must be a mixture. There must be a taruva. So the same thing would follow for zoreh, for winnowing, and the same thing should follow for miraked. That's the Gemara comes out. So really, according to our Gemara, they're all basically the same, just since each one was independently done in the Mishkan. Therefore, we keep them independently as a list. And therefore, the mafkamina for that is, if Chas v'Shalom someone's machal Shabbos, if he does these 3 actions, he has 3 strikes against him. It's not one avera, it's 3 independent averas of winnowing, selecting, and sifting. Okay, now it's story time. There are certain incidents that happen in history that are seemingly insignificant, but ultimately develop into be major world-changing events. I'm sure everyone can think of examples. Here's the following example I'm thinking of. One Shabbos afternoon, Rabbi Akiva Eiger is taking a walk to shul. He's probably, trying to get there on time for learning Seder. And as he gets into the chutzah, the courtyard of the shul, Akiva Eiger notices, use my own poetic license, he notices some kid whose father's not watching him, taking a pitcher of water, pouring it out the window of the shul. Now, Akiva Eiger's mind all of a sudden starts thinking, there might be some potential Shabbos problems here. Well, there was an Erev, so there's no problem of carrying. That's issue number one, no problem. There was no grass in the shul courtyard because, as we know, kids run around all the time. There's nothing growing in any vegetation in any shul courtyard. So there's no problem of watering the grass. Thinks from Akiva Eiger to himself, perhaps there's an issue here of Zoreh. Perhaps it's an issue here of winnowing, because we started on top, the kid pouring out water. It's one mass. It's one pitcher of water, one cup of water. And now, as the goes through the air, as the gravity is pulling it down, it's being dispersed into multiple particles. That very much resembles Zoreh, winnowing. Akiva Eiger is mistapik as he's walking into shul. Perhaps this kid is being machal Shabbos. Maybe he's transgressing the avera, the malacha of Zoreh, winnowing. Okay. However, if everyone was with me till now, the first step is, why is there winnowing here? There's no taruvis. We said the first step in winnowing is that it has to be a mixture. Water is not a mixture. It was pure water. It wasn't anything else. And why was Rabbi Akiva Eiger thinking that perhaps this young person who was pouring out the water out the window was transgressing Shabbos? So he explains as follows. There's Yerushalmi, which is number 2 here on the paper. And the Yerushalmi says, Rokak, if someone spits on Shabbos, and the wind disperses his spit, Chayiv mishum Zoreh, he's chayiv because of winnowing. V'chol davar shu mechus l'ruach, says the Yerushalmi, anything which is dispersed in the wind, which is split up in the wind, you're chayiv mishum Zoreh. So we have a Yerushalmi here which clearly learns, even if there's no taruvis, there's no mixture of anything. You have one solid mass, or a liquid, not really a solid mass, but you have it's one unit, and that's being dispersed in the wind, says the Yerushalmi Zoreh. Comes along the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch at the end of Siman Shin Yud Tes. The Ramah quotes this Yerushalmi. So don't tell me this is some radical Yerushalmi off the beaten path that we're not going to go with. The Ramah quotes this case exactly. Haroikik Baruach, number 3 on the paper. Someone spits in the wind on Shabbos, and the wind mefazir, the ruach is mefazir it. You're chayiv mishum Zoreh. So here we have the Ramah passing like the Yerushalmi that Zoreh you're chayiv even if there's no taruvis, there's no mixture. And we have the Ramah passing like this Yerushalmi. So Akiva Eiger is mistapik. Perhaps he should go tell this guy who's pouring the water out the window that he's being machal Shabbos. Illegal. You can't do this on Shabbos. Right? This is a very earth-shattering story that happened. This is a world-changing event. As we'll see, this tshuva Akiva Eiger wrote about this case is going to be the discussion for the next 200 years till now, how we define Zoreh. Yeah.
What if there was no wind and it was just the power of gravity?
Excellent question. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We're going to get to that hopefully a little bit later. However, it says Akiva Eiger, he'd like to be machalik for 3 reasons why the case of spilling water out the window is different than spitting in the wind. And I didn't quote the whole Chuvas Akiva Eiger here, but it's really summarized on the next page. The Be'er Halacha really summarized in number 7. I'm going to speak out the 3 main points which Akiva Eiger delineates that it's different between Zoreh, between spitting in the wind, with the Ramah's case, and the case with spilling water out the window. Why? Spitting in the wind is Zoreh, according to the Ramah, but pouring water out the window would not be Zoreh. Number 1 says Akiva Eiger, which is again, I'm going to paraphrase really how the Be'er Halacha sums it up from number 7, is as follows. The first thing he says is, something's very strange here. He says, we have Gedolei HaRishonim, and the expression he uses is that, I got the words over here. Shaloi asher kol roz loy ne'elam mahem. There are no secrets of Torah hidden from the Rishonim. The Rambam, the Rif, Taisus, the Rosh, all the Gedolei Rishonim. No one of the Gedolei Rishonim quote this case of the Yerushalmi. None of them bring this case to halacha that spinning in the wind is chayiv mishum Zoreh. They knew it all. Even before the computer search, they had all the information. So the Ramah is quoting a Das Yachid, the Arzarua, one of the Rishonim, who does quote the Yerushalmi, but says Akiva Eiger, first red flag against the Ramah is that the Gedolei Rishonim don't quote this case. So it's true there's Yerushalmi, it's true one Rishon quotes the Yerushalmi, but obviously it's not the general opinion, it's not the accepted opinion, because all the main Rishonim don't go with it. That's issue number 1, Akiva Eiger says. Issue number 2, which is personal to this case, particularly of spilling the water, he says perhaps the case of the Ramah is specific about rokak, about spitting. What's the difference between spitting and pouring water? Without getting all involved in all the details, but we know there are many of the halachos of Shabbos are only by gedulei karka, only by things which grow from the ground. For example, toichin. To be chayav on Shabbos of grinding, it has to be something which is grown from the ground. Therefore, for example, there will be no problem of chopping up meat finally, because meat doesn't grow from the ground. Or other examples. We're not going to get lost in all the examples now. As opposed to vegetables that grows from the ground, there will be a problem of toichin. Says Reb Eger, there's a fascinating discussion in many of the poskim that in many areas of halacha, a person has a status of gedulei karka. Okay, we'll accept that for now, which is really a shiur unto itself, where and when we see such a concept. But often we have a concept in halacha that man, although we don't pop out of the ground, but since we're nourished from the ground and we're dependent on the ground, there is an opinion in halacha that man is similar to gedulei karka. Therefore, says Reb Eger, perhaps the Ramah was only being machmir for Zoreh by things which are gedulei karka, and he included man in that rubric of gedulei karka. But water which is not gedulei karka, goes through the water cycle, then even according to the Ramah, you would not be chayiv if you spill water out. Says Reb Eger, I'll give you a geshmak adik why I'm right. If you look back for a bit on the first page, in number 2, the Yerushalmi, the last words of the Yerushalmi were, the first case was spitting, and then the last words of the Yerushalmi is v'chol davar shu mechusel ruach, anything which is going to be dispersed in the wind, yachai mishum zoreh. If you look in the Ramah, number 3, the Ramah only quotes the first words of the Yerushalmi. If someone spits in the wind, haroikik beruach Shabbos, haruach mefaze haroik, and the wind goes ahead and splits up the spittle, yachai mishum zoreh. The Ramah only quoted the first part of the Yerushalmi, cut off the last part of the sentence. The last part of the sentence, which would imply that anything you're chayiv if it gets dispersed in the wind. Says Reb Eger, therefore, the Ramah was particularly only talking about a case of spitting in the wind, and not a case of spilling water, because spitting in the wind is coming from a person, and you can argue that a person might have a halachic status of gedulei karka. That's attack number 2 on the on this case. Well, it's not directly on Yerushalmi. It's a reason why the case of Reb Eger was discussing of spilling water out the window would not be an issue of Zoreh. The last point Reb Eger raises is a general principle in Hilchos Shabbos called psik reisha. Psik reisha basically is that certain things are usher, even though I don't want that outcome to happen, but since automatically when I cut off, psik reisha literally means chopping off the head, when the head is detached. I don't want to kill a chicken, the case the Gemara is discussing. I just want the head of the chicken for my kid to play with. Beautiful example the Gemara gives. So even though all I need is the head, I don't need to kill the chicken. For all I care, the chicken could live. But since it's an automatic part of nature, when I chop off a chicken's head, it might flutter for a minute or two, mefarcheses a little bit, but it's going to die. That's called psik reisha, and therefore it's going to be asur on Shabbos, even though I don't need the result. I just need the head off the chicken. So, however, there is a certain case called psik reisha deloi nichalei, which is a big machlokes rishonim. What that means is that I don't even want, it's bad for me if that result happens, or it's that I don't need it. It's totally superfluous, and it could be even detrimental in certain cases. And that's a machlokes rishonim if that's asur midrabanan or not. Says Reb Eger, since it's a machlokes rishonim by a case of psik reisha deloi nichalei, again, which I don't need. So in this case, I'm spilling the water down. I don't need the wind to scatter it out. Maybe I just want the stream of water to hit the ground. I want to see how that looks. I don't need it to be scattered out by the wind. It's totally superfluous to my action of what I'm doing. Therefore, says Reb Eger, for these 3 reasons, we'll recap in a minute, he said there's no chilul Shabbos of spilling water out the window as long as you're not getting involved in watering the grass or issue of carrying or anything like that. So again, there's no right. Okay, hold on. Let's recap for a second. So we have like this. We had the Bavli, which clearly learned that Zoreh is together with Boirer, and therefore that would imply that the only time someone's chayiv on winnowing on Shabbos is if there's a mixture of good and bad. We had the case of the Yerushalmi, which seemed to imply that Zoreh is just the action of dispersing something in the wind, even when there's no psoilus, there's no junk. Everything is just one unit together. Still, the fact that it's being dispersed, you are chayiv on Shabbos. That was the Ramah quotes that case particularly about someone spitting in the wind on Shabbos. And Ramah said it's asur. Reb Eger said, however, that's only going to be particularly for spit or other things which are gedulei karka, even if there's no taroives, because we're being machmer that it's only zoreh by gedulei karka. But in the case of mayim, that's the case Reb Eger is talking about, where number 1, Rishayim don't quote this case at all. Only the Ramah brings it. Number 2, we said Mayim is not Gedulei Karka. Number 3, it's Psik Reish Lanichale. Therefore, we said there's no Chilul Shabbos in spilling the water out the window. That's what we're holding right now. That's Akiva Eiger and Shuvis, and that's the story that shook the world at the time, and it's going to continue to shake the world as we go along. It doesn't seem like such a major story, but it really the halachic Svarim really got excited about it. Comes along with Akiva Eiger and Shulchan Aruch in the Hagais, which is back on page 1 in number 4. Rabbi Akiva Eiger there doesn't quote himself in the Tshuva what he wrote about how he argues with Ramah in a particular case of Mayim, but over here he goes even one step further. And in the Shulchan Aruch, he says, he's quoting from a sefer called the Rikash, which is from the Gedolei HaSfardim, or the Poskim, and he says, I'll read it, it says, V'lo re'inu misha chashash lazeh. We have never seen anyone who is makbid, who is stringent in this halacha of the Ramah, of even spitting in the wind. Kivan she'eina miskam l'kach. You don't care if your spit gets split up or it stays one glob onto the floor. Kol shkein she'ering derech zriya b'kach, this is not the way of winnowing, like we said before, because there's no taroivis here. Therefore, Akiva Eiger and Shulchan Aruch even goes one step further. Not only now would the case of spilling the water out the window be permissible, but based on what he's quoting here from the Rikash, this would be, even the Ramah's case, we don't have to be machmir, because the pashas of our Gemara, again, is against this, and we're not machmir for this is not zriya, and therefore Akiva Eiger and Shulchan Aruch is passing even the Ramah, so to speak, is out with the wind. The Mishnah Brura, in number 5, quotes this from Akiva Eiger and does not quote any dissenting view. So it seems to be from the Pashas HaMishnah Brura, which is number 6 on the paper. Number 6, Mishnah Brura in Sifka and Samach Zayin. Mishnah Brura says quotes the Akiva Eiger word for word and says we're not chayshish for this, and he ends off Ayin Ber Halacha, which is number 7. The Ber Halacha, the first part of the Ber Halacha, is what we discussed before, the Tshuva of Akiva Eiger, but the last 4 lines of the Ber Halacha, quotes from a sefer Alfei Menashe, which is on Gemara, not a commonly used sefer, but of course the Chafetz Chaim had it all at his fingertips, and he quotes from the Alfei Menashe, who says, what's Pshat in the Yerushalmi? We don't want to argue on Lahedja Yerushalmi, we rather, make peace. Says the Alfei Menashe, the Ber Halacha is quoting it, that there's a printing mistake in the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says because of winnowing. It doesn't mean mishum zoyreh, it means mishum zoyrek. Instead of the hey at the end, should be a kuf at the end, which you can see, it's not such a big difference. And zoyrek means throwing, because you're transgressing by spitting in the wind in a place where there's no eruv. Something is going to travel in Rishus Rabim. You're causing your spit to go in Rishus Rabim potentially 4 amis. So if it goes 4 amis, the Yerushalmi learns yechai mishum zoyrek, not mishum zoyreh. And the Ber Halacha, after he quotes this Alfei Menashe, says, he ends off in the last 2 words, V'hu nachain, and this is the correct Peshat. So not only now, according to the Ber Halacha, do we argue in the Ramah, but the Ramah now, according to this Peshat, has no basis. It's a mistake to begin with the Yerushalmi, and the Ber Halacha says that's the correct Peshat. Yes, Rabbi Chanan.
Where does he say it's a printing mistake as opposed to just... I didn't see that. Is that like in the original source? He says, Kavonas Yerushalmi.
Okay. I took that from in number 5. The Aruch Shulchan speaks to that Lahedja in number 5, the previous page. I was about to get to that, where the Aruch Shulchan says the same Pshat. I'm sorry, I'm back and forth to the pages, but I'm sorry. That's what happens. He says Lahedja like this Pshat, and he explained it's a printing mistake. That's what I was getting from in the Yerushalmi. And again, so we have the Aruch HaShulchan now, we have the Mishnah Brura, all arguing with the Ramah, not only in the case of spilling water, but even in the original halacha that the Ramah said of spitting in the wind, according to the Mishnah Brura, according to Aruch HaShulchan, the Ber Halacha. This is all going to be 100% permissible. This is not Zoyreh, and we can understand this very well, because like we started off with, the Bavli learns, in order to be Chayav on Zoyreh, step 1 is you have to have a taruvas, you have to have a mixture. And all these cases of spit or of water, there is no mixture, it's one unit to begin with, and therefore it's all going to be permissible unless you're running into problems where there's no eruv, or you're watering the grass, or things like that. But else the problem of winnowing, according to Gedolei HaPoskim at this point, there will be no problem. That's what we're holding right now. So if everyone will leave now, everything will be mutter, and can have a great Shabbos. However, we still have a couple pages to go in the booklet, so let's keep going. In number 8, which is back on page 2, there's another sefer from the Chafetz Chaim called Sefer Machaneh Yisrael. The Chafetz Chaim wrote numerous for him. The Sefer Machaneh Yisrael was a handbook that the Chafetz Chaim wrote for the Jewish soldiers that were going into the Russian army, and it was going to be very hard for them to keep Torah mitzvahs there. He wrote like a Kitzur halacha similar to a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch for Hilchos Shabbos and other halachos. This is what you got to know when you're in the army, when you're away from all Jews. Try to keep all this. This is the basics what you have to know. So over there in Sefer Machaneh Yisrael, I copied out just a quick 2 lines. When he wants to explain to the soldiers what's the Isser of Zoreh on Shabbos, where does winnowing apply when you're out in the middle of nowhere's land? So he says this case. HaZoreh, I'll read it together. Pirish Zoreh bereches l'ruach chai. You throw up with a pitchfork. That's the case, the classic case of throwing up the wheat. V'lachein says the Chafetz Chaim, Asr lorak beruach. It's asr to spit in the wind. V'aruach mefazroi, and the ruach will disperse it. V'chein, and similarly, asr lefazer kol davar sheifazroi soy ruach. It's asr to throw anything into the wind that will get dispersed by the wind. So we got multiple issues here. Number one, here the Mishnah Berurah in the Sefer Machaneh Yisrael is clearly paskening, like the Ramah, that spitting in the wind is Asr and Shabbos because of Zoreh. And he even goes a step further than the Ramah. He goes with the pure Yerushalmi, which we said before that even the Ramah himself didn't quote it, that anything being dispersed, and even not wind, even if it's plain water, according to the way the Chafetz Chaim is writing it in Sefer Machaneh Yisrael, would also be a problem of Zoreh. This is seemingly a contradiction in the psakim of the Chafetz Chaim, because over here he's being machmer, and we see clearly in Mishnah Berurah and the Be'er Halacha he was being mekel. So I don't have a way to resolve necessarily this contradiction, but I would like to speak out some other poskim who are also machmer along this train of thought. First of all, well, it's Kitzur so that people remember that there are mitzvahs in them. Okay, I don't know. I haven't done enough, I guess, of a historic research on that, but I would like to believe that the Chafetz Chaim writing a Kitzur halachos for the soldiers, he's not trying to give them chumras. He's trying to make it, so to speak, as easy as he can for them. They're away from all Yiddishkeit. We want to keep them on the path. So this is the small booklet. Take this with you. Keep this, and when you get back after 20 years, hopefully you'll still be Shari Torah mitzvahs. You know, so I would think that he's trying to give them an easier way, so to speak, and not make it difficult for them. You could argue, like you're saying, I don't have a proof against you, but you know, at least it's something to think about. If that's what he meant, then you have to go through a whole sefer in the kind of vein that maybe it's not really the halacha, it's just kind of keeping you within a certain hashkafa satire, which could be. But okay, there's in the sefer Avi Ezri, which is of Shach ala Rambam, which I didn't copy here because it's a long shtickle. I'm just going to speak it out. Really, we spoke about this a lot. A lot of the sugya here, the Kail did second seder recently, so I had to go through a lot about arichas, and this is really we spoke out. What I'm going to tell you now, we spent more time on in second seder, but we're going to spend less time on it now because we got to get to more exciting things. But the Reb Shach and Avi Ezri really want to defend the Yerushalmi and explain why there's no machlokes Yerushalmi and Bavli. Because like we started off before, the reason why many of the poskim are veering away from this chumrah of the Yerushalmi, of not spitting in the wind, is because Pashas HaBavli is not going with it. The Bavli explains that Zoreh has the same qualifications as Boirer. Just like Boirer needs a taruvus, a mixture, so too Zoreh, winnowing, needs a taruvus. Says Rav Shach Zatzal that perhaps you can argue as follows. As we know, every malacha, there's the Av malacha, the main malacha, and then there are toldos. There are various offshoots and things that come off from the main part of the malacha. And he has a whole way of explaining how we determine which toldos line up to which avos, ayin sham. But let's say it like this. He says, if you look at the malacha of Zoreh, you can see in the Av malacha there are two aspects to it. One aspect of Zoreh, of winnowing, is just like Boirer. You're separating the good from the bad. There's the mixture here, and I want to break up that mixture. Part 2 of Zoreh is that I'm accomplishing it through the wind. Both aspects are integral to Zoreh, because if we're just separating, then that's exactly like Boirer. What makes Zoreh unique to Boirer is the fact that Zoreh has the wind force in it that's helping you. Because if I wouldn't have that halacha, if I would just have the halacha of Boirer, I would say, I need to separate it with my hands. That's the way to do it. Perhaps if I would just blow something away, maybe you could argue and say that that's maybe a shinui. That's not a typical way. That's an indirect way of separating. Without the chiddush of the halacha of Zoreh, I wouldn't know that that's an Isser on Shabbos. Now I have Zoreh, so I have an additional aspect. Not only is it selecting, but additional aspect to Zoreh is the fact that the wind is dispersing it. Argues Reb Shach, and he wants to say that perhaps what Yerushalmi means, that you're chai mishum Zoreh, didn't mean you're chai mishum the av malacha of Zoreh. All it meant was that you're chai al tolda, it's an offshoot of Zoreh, and that this is one of the integral parts of Zoreh. It would be a downgrade from the original Zoreh because again there's no Taruvus here, but it's not against the Bavli, it's not against our Gemara because our Gemara was discussing the Av Melacha. When is the Spitz case of Zoreh? When you have both aspects, a mixture and the wind is helping you separate. If only one of those aspects exists, so for example, only you have the first aspect, all you have is a separation, a mixture which you're separating, that would be Bayer. But if I only have the second aspect, wind dispersing a material, suggests Rav Shach that you can say that at least that's a tolda of Zoreh, at least that's a secondary aspect of Zoreh, and that's what Yerushalmi means that you're chayiv. So what Rav Shach is trying to accomplish in a nutshell is that there's not a stira, there's not a contradiction in the way the Bavli and Yerushalmi are understanding Zoreh. They both agree for the Av Melacha, Zoreh needs both aspects. The Yerushalmi is putting forth that for the Tolda of Zoreh, you could be chayiv even if there's no mixture, just dispersing it by itself. Does the Bavli argue with that? You can't say for sure yes, because the Bavli is not discussing what a Tolda of Zoreh might be. The Bavli is only discussing what an Av might be. Based on this Rav Shach, we could already have an opening and understanding of where some of the Paiskim will continue in the line of the Ramah and be machmir for this psak, even though, like we said before, that Pashas HaBavli is against it. But again, the way Rav Shach wants us to suggest is that there's an offshoot of Zoreh, which is just the fact that wind disperses matter, and that might be a tolda of Zoreh.
I mean, in other cases of Av Malachos and Toldos, is that the usual case that a Tolda only has to have certain components of the Av in order to be a Tolda, or does it have to have all the components? That's
a valid question. That's going to have to be a different discussion. Shach is coming off of Magen Mishnah on the Rambam. We have it here. I can show you where it is, and that just opens up a whole different discussion. So let's try to stay over here for now. That often the case. The answer is yes and no. Okay. Okay, so now we have Rav Shach. Rav Shach is telling us this Yisai, that Yerushalmi means that you're chayav mishum Zoreh because it's a tolda of Zoreh that you have the idea that it's being dispersed in the wind. Comes along the Chemdas Yisrael. The Chemdas Yisrael predates Rav Shach. This is the Kli Chemda, which we have over here in the Shul Al Torah. He has a sefer called Chemdas Yisrael. Rav Meir Don Platsky from the Gedolei of Poland, from the Greisa Lamdanim there. Yeah.
The question on Shach
sure.
is still that all the Rishonim, like you said.
Right. You can't get away from that fact. Right. We're just coming to explain that perhaps coming to save the Yerushalmi from totally being rejected. That maybe that's what Yerushalmi meant. But you're right. Gedolei Yerushalmi still didn't quote it. So Rav Shach, he's not writing a sefer halachos, so to speak. He's just writing in the sugis how it could be that the Bavas argued Yerushalmi. Comes along the Chemdas Yisrael of Meir Don Platsky, the Gedolei of Poland, and he wants to suggest a radical idea. This is a couple lines down in number 9 in the booklet, about 4 lines down from the top. He says, Luli de mistafina, not for the fact that I was afraid, I'd want to suggest the following idea. What does the Yerushalmi mean that when I'm spitting in the wind, I'm chai mishum Zoreh? So we just said, from Reb Shach, perhaps it means that you're chai mishum the tolda, because you're dispersing it in the wind, but there's no taruvis, there's no mixture here. So you're getting only one aspect of Zoreh. Says the Chemdas Yisrael, I would like to suggest that maybe even there's a mixture here that's being separated by the wind. Why? He says a couple lines down, it's about 6-7 lines down, he says, kavonas hayushalmi is, kiven diroik yesh by harkava, since there's a mixture within every person's saliva, bikama yisoidais, for many enzymes or many things, or whatever things that make up the saliva. Speak to our local physicians exactly what's in the saliva. Ki yadua la hativayim, like it's known to those people who study the sciences. V'yan ki hu davar dakma oid, and something which is very minute, and that's nischalak aydei haruach. Perhaps, suggests the Chemdas Yisrael, what Yerushalmi means, it's not at odds with the Bavli at all. Yerushalmi was understanding that even within spit, although we might look at it as one matter, as one unit, but since it's made up of multiple particles, I don't know if it's particles, it's liquids, I don't know what you call it. It's multiple things. You don't use directive, you use very loose words. It's like stuff and things. So the stuff is made up of many things, right? And that suggests the Chemdas Yisrael is why you can even say that the Yerushalmi says Yechai Mishum Zoreh, because there is a mixture here, and you're separating the mixture. Now, of course, a lot of people are raising their eyebrows at me because this is a little bit of a radical looking at saliva, because as we see, saliva is only one mass. It's true there might be many atoms in it, might be many particles in it, but we see it as one unit. And therefore, he ends off that, the last two lines says, I'm just saying this as a suggestive shot, but he himself is not buying into it as being the bottom line halacha, but again, we're just trying to save face of why maybe perhaps the Yerushalmi is not at odds with the Bavli, but la halacha, he's not saying necessarily that we're going to go like that. Yeah. Because what makes up the saliva is things that are good for you and things that are not good for you, right? Okay. All right, that might be a different discussion. I don't want to get involved in that discussion. But, okay.
He's not getting rid of the bad stuff so he can go and gather up the good stuff and take it back.
Right, you're missing the next step. Right, that's also true. But okay, what we have so far is at least the Paiskim we see are grappling, they're trying to grab onto some threads to figure out how the Yerushalmi could be even Zer, even according to our understanding. And number 10, in the Sefer Toitzas Chaim is a fascinating Sefer written by Nachum Zemba, Hashem Yinkum Damav, who was killed in the Warsaw Ghetto, from the Gedalia of Poland also. He was probably friends with Mayor Don Platsky. He was a little younger than him, but of Nachum Zemba. Probably crossed paths with Mayor Don Platsky a couple times. They were definitely, Mayor Don Platsky was a little bit older, but they were in the same Tekufa. And the Sefer Toitzas Chaim, P-Session was there also, right?
Today. They're today.
Ooh, very good. And Toitzas Chaim is a sefer we don't have too much of his farm left, but this is a sefer from Nachum Zemba which was written on halachos of Haitzah on Shabbos, of carrying. It's a very lomdish sefer, and he's in the middle of here discussing a fascinating shaila about if you're chayiv on Shabbos, if I'm goyrim, if I do a grama of Haitzah. Okay, I don't want to get lost here, but if I'm not actually carrying something out, if there's only a grama in my Haitzah, am I chayiv on Shabbos or not? At the end of the piece, where it's bracketed off all the way at the end, number 10, he says, I found something very disturbing. I found from a Tshuva's Divrei Mordechai, which suggests the Yerushalmi, which we started with, of spitting on Shabbos, like we said before from the Bir Halacha and from the Aruch HaShulchan, the Tshuva's Divrei Mordechai suggests the same thing. That doesn't mean you're Chai Mishum Zoreh, rather means you're Chai Mishum Zorik. Like we said, you're Chai because it's carrying, if there's no Eruv, spitting in the wind, and the wind carrying the saliva, you'd be Chai because of carrying. Says the Toitzas Chaim Nachum Zemba, I found this shot of the Divrei Mordechai very offensive. I think it's totally incorrect. It doesn't fit into Yerushalmi if you look in the context over there, and otherwise he has other Gemaras which are in the Bavli which are at odds with it, and therefore it's impossible to learn the Yerushalmi is talking about Zoyrek. It must be talking about Zoyra, but Ein Kamokum Harach Mazal. I'm not going to write too much about this now, but FYI, I'm letting you know, says Nachum Zemba, that the Pshat in the Yerushalmi is Zoyra and not Zoyrek. So he doesn't give us too much information how he learns the Yerushalmi, but we have one of the Gedali Halamdis here who are telling us that the Pshat in the Yerushalmi is Kipshuta, that Yerchai Mishum Zoreh, against the Bir Halacha and against the Aruch HaShulchan, how they learned, and he wants to say that doesn't fit in with the whole context of the Yerushalmi and other various Gemaras over there. So, to recap what we have so far, we have a Bavli, which says Zoreh is Chai Mishum only if you have Taroivis, you have a mixture. We have a Yerushalmi, which says spitting in the wind is Chai Mishum Zoreh. We have the Ramah, who quotes the Yerushalmi. He says you cannot spit on the wind on Shabbos. We have Rabbi Kiva Eger in Shuvis, who gives us a case of throwing water in the wind and says that's fundamentally different than spitting in the wind. And even if you're going to be machmer for spitting, you could be makel for water. We have Rabbi Kiva Eger and Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah and the Aruch Shulchan all paskening that even the Ramah is a big chumrah. We don't have to be machmer like the Ramah. And we had various other mahalchim just to try to save face to Yerushalmi. We had Reb Shach who explained that maybe it's a tolda. We had the Chemnas Yisrael who explained maybe there's some taroivis in the spit. And then we had here Reb Nachum Zemba just letting us know that there's no mistake in Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi ben Zoyra, but he doesn't really give us too much more information of how he learns it. Now I'd like to move on to discuss some of the contemporary shaylas that evolve from our case. Well, of course, the first case is spitting in the wind on Shabbos. That we already covered. The Ramah is machmer, many gedolei haposkim are mekel. But what's more common, people might not feel so comfortable spitting in the wind, hopefully. What's more applicable is using various spray cans or aerosol cans on Shabbos. As we're all familiar, either from deodorant bottles, perfume bottles, any other type of spray can where you push a little button on top, and the liquid that's in there gets forced out by some air pressure and disperses into multiple particles. Is that permissible or forbidden on Shabbos? So, first thing we know is that according to the Bavli, according to most of the Gedolei HaPoskim, let's go to Mishnah Berurah and Aruch HaShulchan's Psak, they understand that Zoreh has to be a taruvis. What's inside that bottle might have been made up of various chemicals at one time, but right now it's one liquid. And even when you spray the button, it's not being broken up. There's no it's not breaking up the mixture. All it's doing is taking the liquid and dispersing it into easier way to use it. Instead of coming out as one stream, it's now being dispersed into 50 different little droplets, whatever it is, right? But you're not breaking up the mixture at all. So pashas of the psak of the Mishnah Berurah and the Aruch HaShulchan and Kiveger would be that there's no shayla, it's 100% permissible. However, if you're going to go with the pashas of the Yerushalmi, then, and the way that the Ramah paskins, it would seem like it should be a problem because it's a problem of Zoreh, even by just dispersing the matter into the air, even though I'm not breaking up a taruvis.
It's only going to be a problem with part of the because he was saying that Tola is not necessarily...
Okay, how about the pashas?
If it's not completely karka.
Oh, but Ramah never said only Gedulei Karka, meaning Rabbi Kiveger was trying to make up that chilik that perhaps you can say that Zoreh, right, according to that side of Rabbi Kiveger's tshuva, that Zoreh is only by Gedulei Karka, this would also not be a shayla, maskim. But the Ramah never said that, and we don't know, the Gemara never said Zoreh is only by Gedulei Karka. That was a suggestion by Rabbi Kiveger, so you can still argue that Pashas Ramah is to still be machmir.
Is it like deodorants?
Deodorants, perfumes, colognes, any of the spray type of bottles. So water bottle, spritzer, anything like that. Again, so we have, in contemporary Chuvas, let's just speak it out quickly. We have in number 11, we have a shayla from Rav Vosner, the Shefer Levi Zatzal. He's discussing using a spray against bugs, maybe some type of off spray or something like that. And he comes from 3 different angles. What we're going to focus on here is the idea of Zoreh, is it a problem of winnowing or not? He basically recaps what we just spoke out and says that based on the Gedolei Psak of the Mishnah Berurah and the Aruch HaShulchan and those poskim who don't go with this chumrah of the Yerushalmi, it will be permissible. But the last couple lines he says, if you would ask me lechatchila, I don't think you should do it. He doesn't really explain why not. Is he be machmir for the pashas Ramah? I'm not sure. But he says, even though it's mutter, if you would ask me, I'm not comfortable doing it. That's Rav Vosner's psak. Comes along Dayan Padava, number 12. Very interesting tshuva. Dayan Padava was a big dayan.
You should pour it at the
Pour it, right. And then it won't get dispersed. Right, won't get dispersed. Dayan Padova was a big dayan in England, passed away a couple of years ago, and he was asked a shayla that someone heard from his grandson that he asked her using hairspray bottles on Shabbos. He wanted to know if it was true or not. So he says, first of all, let me tell you the source of this rumor. When my granddaughter was in seminary, she wrote me a letter, like a good granddaughter would do to her grandfather. Instead of asking her grandfather for money, she asked him a shayla, because he was a dayan. She asked that the girls in seminary want to use hairspray on Shabbos. Is it mutter or not? And Dayan Padava wrote a letter to his granddaughter and explained to her for 2 reasons you shouldn't do it on Shabbos. Number 1 is because the issue of Zoreh, it's like winnowing, because it's dispersing the hairspray into multiple particles. You'll ask me that Gedolei HaPoskim all said you don't have to follow the chumrah of the Ramah. He says it's true, but Lamaisa, at the end of the day, the Ramah wrote it, the Ramah paskined it, and if there's no need, if it's not a necessary, something we need on Shabbos, I'm not comfortable going against the psak of the Ramah. That's what Dayan Padava said, and then he brought up another issue, which we're not going to get into so much now, about something called moilid reach, infusing a smell into something on Shabbos, which is also a big machlokes at poskim if someone has to be machmer upon that or not in their own body, in their hair or on their skin. He says, but since it's a machlokes, also I told my granddaughter to be machmer. It's best not to do it. It's not necessary. And he says, there are ways to be makel. He says, but I felt it was not necessary for the girls to go ahead and use all these spray bottles on Shabbos. It was unnecessary, and if they're machmer when they get older, also it's also a good idea. There's no reason to be makel, and therefore Dayan Padava just says, if you go with Pashas Ramah, we should be machmir, and he did not allow his grandchildren to use these spray bottles on Shabbos. However, although we have the Shevet HaLevi and we have Dayan Padava who are being machmir, Raiv, Minyan, and Binyan of our Gedaliah Poskim are Mekel. Number one, we have the tshuva. The big tshuva about this is a tshuva in the Sefer Minchas Yitzchak, which is number 13. Dayan Weiss, who was the head of the Eida Charedis for many years. First he was a Dayan in England for many years. Then he was a Dayan in the Eida Charedis. And he has a tshuva discussing their perfume bottles and cologne. The same thing would be with deodorant bottles, all the same idea. And he says that at the end of the day we have Kiveger and Tshuva, which we went through before, the three reasons why there's no issue here of Zoreh. We have the Bavli, which is seemingly against the Yerushalmi. Furthermore, he brings up the point, which I think First Chaim raised before, that the wind here is not what's dispersing it, it's the force of my pushing the button which is dispersing the matter. It's not necessarily it's not the natural wind, and therefore for other reasons as well, we're just going to cut it short here. He says it's mutter and it will be permissible to use all these spray bottles on Shabbos. There's no chashash at all. In number 14, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach has well held there's no reason to be machmer on any spray bottles for Zoreh. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein is quoted as well as being mekel. Chacham Ovadia has many tshuvas about this. He says he's heard people that are machmer. He can't believe some people are machmer about this on Shabbos. It makes no sense if you go through all our Gemaras, even though the Ramah does quote it, but the Gedaliah Poskim will reject it, and Rabbi Yashiv as well is quoted as being mekel on all spray bottles on Shabbos. So halacha l'maisa, all these shilas, according to our Gedaliah Poskim, you could be mekel. Again, there is an opinion out there. Rabbi Menashe asked me yesterday, did I ever hear of such a chumrah that you can't use the spray on the sinks? The spray thing that you can wash the dishes. I'm not talking about a Shabbos using hot water on Shabbos. We're talking about just using the cold water to wash it on Shabbos. So I said, I can understand where the chumrah is coming from, but based on this shayla, but from our Gedaliah Poskim who reject this chumrah based on the pashas of the Bavli, we could say it's mutter and it would not be a problem, any issue of chil Shabbos at all.
Would there be any spray bottle in the aerosol though?
Hit that.